Mr. Waltz, thanks so much for coming to my office yesterday, and I enjoyed the discussion. I know you're going to do a terrific job representing our nation's interests at the United Nations. We are the largest financial contributor to the U.S. We've contributed, what, $13 billion to the United Nations the last fiscal year. As the U.S. ambassador to the UN, you're going to need to closely examine how American taxpayer funding is being used by so many of these international programs. Can you talk about your commitment to reviewing every dollar going to the UN to ensure that our taxpayer dollars is being used wisely? And I mean, if I recall, you had a list yesterday of just some amazing places that I think taxpayers would be really offended to see that their taxpayer dollars were going to through the United Nations. Could you share some of that information with us?
Thank you, Senator, and I always appreciate our time together. One of the kind of the main thrusts of the UN, particularly over the last, I'd say, couple of decades, has been on climate and focus on climate change and a number of initiatives. And setting aside the debate on climate, if you just look at the organizations amongst the 80 various specialized agencies, core programs, and funds, you have the UN Environment Program, the UN Convention to Combat Desertification, the International Union for Conservation of Nature, the Secretariat of the Pacific Regional Environmental Program, the Global Environment Facility, the Commission for Environmental Cooperation, the Montreal Protocol, and then you have other agencies like the Global Fund for HIV, Tuberculosis, and Malaria. Okay, but it has as its core mission, one of its core missions, not necessarily those things, but climate change is the largest global health challenge in the 21st century. And just to further, I have a page here, Mr. Chairman, or I have a list of pages, 455 of international organizations that we contribute some type of funding towards, and just
let's put those in the record.
A few of them. The Pacific Salmon Commission, the Pacific Islands Forum Fishery Agency, the Pan-African Postal Union, the Pan-American Health Organization, the Pan-American Institute on Geography and History, the International Lithosphere Program. I mean, so these are the, again, this is, it's quite a list. And this is tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands to 7 to 8 figures to millions that are going to these organizations. And I think it is incumbent on this administration to say, what's it doing? Is it making us safer, stronger, and more prosperous? And are we getting a bang for our buck?
A couple other questions, because the thing I hear about at home in Wyoming is American sovereignty and what the United Nations is trying to do and undermining us. How are you going to work to preserve and to protect American sovereignty within the UN?
Thank you, Senator, and I have to say America's sovereignty will always be first and foremost as we engage all of these international organizations. I think we need to weigh the pros and cons of which organizations we engage, and I think that will be a robust discussion with this committee and with the administration. But to the extent that we do, our sovereignty, our people, our bosses will be first and foremost and top of mind.
I think this came up in both the introduction, a good introduction by Senator Lee, as well as Senator Scott, and in your opening remarks. The fact that the Palestinian Authority has repeatedly sought to use the United Nations as a platform to declare statehood and to downgrade the status of Israel. Will you commit to using the American veto to block these one-sided anti-Israel resolutions at the UN Security Council?
Thank you, Senator. Of course, I will work closely with the President and the Secretary on those votes, but yes, I'll make that commitment.
Do you have any specific measures that you believe should be taken to address the bias against Israel within the UN, and how do we advocate for those changes?
Well, first and foremost has to be UNRWA. It simply not only needs to be defunded, which the President has put in place with his executive order, but it should be dismantled, and we can have a conversation on who and what can take up those humanitarian roles, but it certainly should not be UNRWA.
And then in terms of the selecting a new Secretary General after this term expires, is that something I imagine you'd be very much involved in and perhaps could use some of those same plans in terms of what we need to do there?
So the Secretary General's term will expire at the end of next year. My understanding is kind of the race, so to speak, and the campaigning for that will start this fall, and I'll certainly commit to work with you and others to make sure that we have someone in line with our interests.
So, Mr. Chairman, I'd suggest that make sure we have somebody representing the United States at the UN with this nominee by that time, that all those activities begin.
Good suggestion.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Senator Coons.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.